Thank you everybody for joining. This is Schema App Live. We're going to jump right in. If you do have questions, please do use the Q&A feature from Zoom. Otherwise, let's dig in. My name is Jeffrey Burns, and I am the Customer Success Team Lead at Schema App. What we're looking at right now is my knowledge graph. So I have a history as a digital marketer from Webware before I became a Schema Markup expert. I am Canadian. My absolute favorite sports team is the Toronto Maple Leafs. I may be a fanatic fan. And I work for Schema App, whose founder is Martha Van Berkel, who's joining us today.
Were we not supposed to dress up today, Jeff?
I'm dressing up. I'm wearing the Schema App T-shirt. So
I couldn't decide if I wanted to be Minnie Mouse or a Jedi today, so I thought I'd just be both. But I'm and I'm back. I'm Martha Van Berkel, and I'm the founder and also the CEO at Schema App. And I'm delighted today to be sharing some of our knowledge around e-commerce, especially as the shopping season really gets off to a big swing. This is my knowledge graph. We like to use these to introduce ourselves. And I grew up in enterprise at Cisco. I have a technical background in mathematics and engineering from Queen's University. I also got to go to MIT, which was super fun. I'm also Canadian. I'm also a mom of two very energetic, in fact, a Jedi and Captain Marvel today at school. So inspired by my kids' costumes. And I'm 2 degrees from Kevin Bacon because my car was in his movie. And I'm just like super pumped today to share a little bit about e-commerce. But let me tell you a little bit about Schema App. So Schema App is a full service enterprise schema markup solution. And we basically can do schema markup on any platform, on any content. And we really try to avoid using IT and developers so that you as SEOs can really just get the job done. And the whole intent here is how do we help you really stand out in search, like decorate those search results so you can drive, the ROI and the metrics that you need. And we'll cover a little bit about that today. One of the things that sort of is something I'm very, very proud of is all the different SEOs around the world who are trusting us with their schema markup. And you'll see in some of these e-commerce companies, some of them large enterprise, some of them in the health systems. So we really, run the gamut on the type of customers, and we're just really proud that they're choosing us to help them stand out in search and really do schema markup in an advanced and scalable way. One of the things that we've been told from our customers in our conversations is something that we do differently is really the Schema App experience. And you'll see us sort of talk about this as we go through Schema App Live, but it's really about like getting into strategy. What should you optimize and why? And sort of what are the things that are important to your business that we then match with our enterprise solution, with our amazing technology. And I'll be sharing in a minute different technology that can help you in e-commerce. And then we match it with customer success. So Jeff's here today kind of sharing his expertise and sort of how our customer success team takes care of you sort of throughout that journey, or enables and trains you if you're an agency in order to sort of help you be successful with your customers. And then we talk about ROI. So today we're not just talking about what we can do in e-commerce, but we're also going to talk a little bit about ROI, since that's how sort of we show value, right? It's not just by getting the tech done, but doing that last piece. Now, Schema App has a lot of solutions for e-commerce. And so, I think one of our emails said, like, if you're trying to like make a difference before we get into high shopping season, good news. If you're on Shopify, WooCommerce, BigCommerce, we have plugins actually that do great, that do some of the more advanced schema markup we're going to talk about today, around sort of product variations. And then we also have an integration with Google Merchant Center. And I feel like sometimes we forget to mention this because if you're already managing your Google Merchant Center, you can literally sign up with Schema App and we can have you log into Merchant Center and boom, you have like really amazing product schema markup without like anything. We joke about doing schema markup with more coffee breaks, right? So we can help you do really complex schema markup at scale. If you have Google Merchant Center, give us a call after this or ping someone on the chat and we'll sort of set you up to have a conversation with that. Now, if none of these fit, you're like, Martha, we have a custom solution. We like doing things our way, or you're on Drupal or Salesforce Demandware, something more complex, no worries. Again, we like complexity. We like having to work on things. So our highlighter solution is where those customers really get value, where you can actually, pick elements of the different pages, map that to Schema Markup, including reviews. And so the reason we're going to talk a little bit about aggregate rating, but Bazaar Voice is something that we can integrate directly with. If you're showing the right display of, here it says, 4 out of 5, and how many reviews and so forth, then we can use the highlighter in order to do that across, again, any domain. And then again, Merchant Center, we love Merchant Center. So over to you, Jeff. That's enough about us. But I just get excited because for people who need to take action in the next 30 days, call us. We can do that. But let's jump into more about e-commerce and what's going on in the world.
Absolutely. It's good timing. If you're here trying to plan for Black Friday, you're in good hands. We'll share with you some of the secret sauce to make your markup eligible for products, and you can maximize your return on that Black Friday sale. So our agenda for today, we're going to talk about what's new in the world of markup. Then we're going to dive right in. It's markup for e-commerce. We're going to talk about the rich results. We're going to talk about the do's and don'ts, and we're going to talk about how to maximize the understanding from Google for all those products that may have really key features, but there isn't an obvious schema property in order for you to take advantage of those value propositions or differences in your products. We're going to try and leave maybe 25, 30 minutes for a Q&A. So Schema App Live is all about answering your questions and having a conversation with the Schema Markup community as a whole. So I'm really looking forward to that. But what's new? What's new with Schema Markup? Specifically for products, there is a new shipping rich result. And I know that personally, I like this because I buy a lot of things off my phone now that it's more work from home and more shopping. The key feature here is that you need to have the free shipping or the shipping information on the page in order to inform the result. We're also seeing continued investment in schema.org vocabulary. So there's a new release, and it has many new properties in there. So I think this is the 9th or 10th release in schema.org this year. So we're seeing them come faster and with more additions to the vocabulary. In the pending section of schema.org, we're seeing properties that are relevant to e-commerce and products of this age. So it has areas for you to call out things like the energy consumption or the energy efficiency of your products. And what's really interesting when you look at the GitHub for schema.org, which is where additions to the schema.org vocabulary are discussed, or growth of the vocabulary is discussed, is that Google Shopping is actually jumping in here. They're active in suggesting new schema.org properties that'll inform things like that new shipping feature. So we have our eyes on here. Our tools are going to allow you to implement these very quickly without having to bother your IT team to get it set up. Okay, and another recent change to a rich result. So how-to rich results were mostly available on your phone, but now it's available on your desktop. So what we're seeing is probably the last 2 weeks is click-through rates going up for how-to rich results because it's now eligible on your desktop. Okay, so that's what's new with Schema Markup.
So many fun things. I love that Google is keeping it real and sort of throwing in new rich results, especially for the holiday season. It's like the holiday season came early to us in Schema Markup.
Yeah, it's like Google released that ahead of this so that you would have time to adopt it for your customers or for yourself. That's right. There's probably more that's going to happen. We have a great newsletter, so if you want to keep up to date, sign up for that. But jumping into the e-commerce. So Google Webmasters released a video, SEO for e-commerce. Definitely check that out. We have the link there. You can find it on Google, of course. The key thing to highlight here, though, number 3, implementing product structure data is a best practice. So even Google is telling you you should be doing this. Okay, the key opportunities here. So the number 1 opportunity for e-commerce is the product rich results. That is the rich result that's made for products. It's in the name. There's also the review snippet. So products as a schema type are actually eligible for the 2 different rich results. So if you're measuring, you may see it occur in both of those charts. There's also that new shipping feature. And something to keep in mind is that FAQ can be eligible on product pages as well. So that's a really great feature if you have a lot of goods, like content that you can turn into an FAQ on your product pages. Definitely take advantage of the FAQ rich result. So some do's and don'ts when you're implementing your product markup. We'll go through the don'ts first. So number one is that you don't use product markup on a list of products. Google's intending this feature to be one product, one page. So you want your product details pages to have product schema just for that one. In their documentation, they say that they're not going to support rich results for adult products. So if you offer adult products, that's Google's choice. And
Hey, Jeff, can we go back to the first one around product markup for lists of
sure.
markup? So are you talking about like category pages there or like family of products?
Okay, so good question. So that's different from like a catalog page that lists all your products. For that, you can have multiple instances of product, but it would point to that individual product's display page. What it's saying is that on the page that you want this rich result, only have one product and only use product markup once to describe that single product.
So if you have landing pages for categories or key topics or for sales or seasons, like have those, but you still have to have that individual product page is what I'm hearing.
That's correct.
Got it.
There is one iteration of the product rich result, and that's for an aggregate offer. We'll get into that. So if you're an aggregator and you have offers from many people for one product, there is an option for you. You can do that. Now, something that's a little sneaky and Google doesn't want you to do it is to abuse the results for marketing. So don't create reviews by somebody called get 50% off. That's not going to be cool. Google won't let you do that. Back to the do's now. So one product per page, one product schema per page. Collect and show real reviews. So we like using a widget that's available right on the product display page, capturing user reviews right on that page, and don't curate the reviews. If there's a bad review, you have to show it, unfortunately. This needs to be like immediate and real feedback from the people who are consuming your products. Include the shipping details and definitely take advantage of the FAQ. But after you go through all that effort, this is the beautiful rich result that you're going to achieve. This is what's going to help drive up your click-through rates. This rich information is informing your snippet, enticing people to click on your link.
Now, a question I sometimes get, Jeff, is like, what's the difference between product and review? Because they're different
Yes.
and separate. Can you just kind of talk a little bit about that?
Okay, absolutely. So the product review, first and foremost, includes pricing. That's probably the biggest difference between the product rich result and the review snippet. We can see here a couple of different iterations of the product review snippet. Sorry, this is the top one here with the pricing. It's out of stock. And then you just have a review snippet. And that's where it can have a rating or who's reviewing it. So the big difference between the two is the pricing's left out.
This is a really good example. So, a lot of times people are like, but I can't get everything. And it's like, we really see schema markup as a journey, right? So you got to start with what you got. So if you have pricing, awesome. If you have that it's in stock or out of stock, amazing. And then if, you can build over perhaps like ratings, you can see that there's like a rating piece and then there's also the review, right? So there's lots of different components to this. Schema markup's a journey. Like one of the things we love when we work with our customers on it is like identifying where there's additional opportunity and then sort of working with your team as you're able to add that content to the page, we can then sort of optimize it. So again, I would say like, even if you don't have all these, you're like, oh my goodness, I can't get all those. Great. Do you have a price? Like, do you have one thing that you can start standing out? And then how do we start building on that?
Yeah, you need a price or you need a single review or you need an aggregate of all those reviews. One of those three and you can get a rich result.
Yeah, I love that. And part of it's like how you're showing up to, that buyer directly in that search result, right? And so, whether you're just sitting on his phone doing shopping or you're me trying to like, capture what my kids are saying so I can put it on a Christmas list, like you can very quickly start comparing pricing and seeing where you're going to buy.
One quick caveat, because I know that there's an international audience that's interested in schema markup. This shipping cost is available in the US specifically. Okay, FAQ for products and services. So we've had a discussion, I think, on Schema App Live about how products can be borrowed for services. So
Yes, that was last Schema App Live. If you missed it, you can go to our website and find it under resources. Like it's, yeah, some super fun things around services, but we're talking about e-com, right? So we should focus
right.
on this one on product.
Okay, so there's going to be a lot of like buyers questions, purchasing questions that you can take advantage of. Have that on your product display pages and get this like I really love the FAQ rich result because it just captures so much real estate in the search results. So definitely don't miss this. Put FAQs on your product pages. The only caveat, quick before we move on, is don't repeat the exact same questions on every page. Okay, but how are you going to do it? You're going to start with a primary entity for your page, which is product, because this is e-commerce. And then you're going to nest the FAQ page schema through a property called subject of. And that's just saying this FAQ is the inverse property of subject of about your product. And you'll still be eligible for both the product rich result and the FAQ page. We've also done a Schema App Live about how to do this. So go check that out if you want to have a deeper dive into multi-type entities or nesting schema for different rich results.
So two things. That's complicated schema markup. This is what we do best. This is where our highlighter like really jams. Most plugins won't touch this. So give us a call if you need help on this. Second thing, Google's been playing with FAQ July and August, even into September. We saw them really testing FAQ in different ways. And, you know, when John Mueller, his note was like, you know, it's sort of a natural progression of FAQ. We have seen that level out since about mid-September. So again, we still really think FAQ is a great, it's a really agile type of rich result that you can do on a lot of different types of content. But it's also one that, you know, especially if you're in e-com, you're going to have product, you're going to have reviews. It's a good diversity one to add in. So you have like a mix of different type of rich results as you go in.
All right, I'm seeing a lot of questions already. That's great. If you have a question, shout it out. We love talking with the community and answering what's top of mind for you. So there's some different options around the offers of your rich result, and you can achieve a few different things, especially if you're an aggregator. So I think I'm gonna pass this off to Martha to walk us through it.
All right, hope you've all had your coffee today because this is where we're going to get into some of the nuts and bolts. And Jeff, feel free to jump in.
Sure.
So when you're doing your product schema markup, you know, those of you that have been doing this for a while know that like offers is where you call out your price. And there's just like different ways that you can use offers, especially when there's variations across a product. So an example of a variation could be like the size of the soap bottles if you're selling fancy soap, or the color of the t-shirt. And you know, the size of the shoe, you know, so it really depends on, you know, what you're selling and again, sort of what variations you have. And again, if you're using Google Merchant Feed, you're very familiar about like how you need to call out those like different variations. And so in the most basic way that you can do the offer, you can see in this example here, under the offer, we're putting the things that are common across like the product. So here we're saying the price is common, the price currency, and the availability. And then for prices, you know, use offer if there's like one price present, like no variation, and then use aggregate offer if there is variation in the price. So this is sort of, you know, if you think of like it goes from $3.99 to $6.99. And so if you're doing an aggregate offer, again, the low price and the high price is what you want to have. Now, Jeff, how does like starting price start here? Like, would you just put the low price?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so go ahead.
Well, there's a lot of times, especially if you're borrowing the product rich result for your services, where you want to say, hey, this starts here and it's a quote or a discussion to a final price. You know, one of the variations for the product rich result is with a price. So get whatever your bottom tier pricing is. You know, tell people about it, put it on your page, get it in the markup, and then that can inform your rich result.
Like a good starting place. Like we work with
Yeah.
some clients where it's like, well, it varies. And we're like, great, let's use aggregate offer as a way to kind of tell it varies, but still, you know, be transparent with some of the pricing.
Yeah. Starting from is a great way to get in without giving away all your pricing. So,
So this is a fun one. Do you want to jump in, Jeff?
oh, you know what? You're good. Go for it.
All right. So then when we get into a point where there's like variations And it's not just like variations in the price, but it's also variations in, I'll say, like other properties of the offer, such as, like availability in this example. And so this is where like you can do an offer for each of them. And then you also can identify that variation like either with name or with SKU. And we like SKU because then it's like something that's referenceable across the board. So if that SKU, or G10, there's sort of other sort of global references. So in this example, there's different variations that have their own SKU, their own price and availability. And so in this case, you would actually like list out the different offers that sort of have those unique variables with them. And again, if you're like, oh my goodness, Martha, my mind is about to be blown, this is like the beautiful piece that we automate with Google Merchant Feed, or again in BigCommerce or in Shopify. So like these are again some things that again we're trying to sort of take that complexity and automate it so that you could just get this rich information because it's available, and it sort of adds to like the offering of what you're trying to do. So let's look at the last one. Do we have a last one in here? Yeah. So then
Product
there's sort
model.
of product model. And I think this is like my co-founder Mark's like favorite thing to talk about. In fact, the blog that we've referenced at the end of this kind of goes into great detail about product model. But product model is sort of where there's like significant variations among critical properties. And so, this is where you can see at the top, we're going to define product. And then we're actually going to like call out a model and then talk about there's some things in common. So in this example here, you can see where the arrow is, the type is product model. It has a specific name and the color is white. And then it has a specific offer, right? And then there's another model that has, a different name and then also like a different color and then an offer under it. So it's again, a more advanced application, but you can also, do product models with product models. And so this is again, one that like makes sense. It really depends on what you're offering, where the variations are and where it makes most sense to call out those commonalities.
And you'll probably notice that the product model has just a flat offer, but then the overall product has an aggregate that captures the varied prices between the models.
Boom. Thanks, Jeff.
No problem. Something else that's in there is additional property. And we mentioned at the start that maybe your product has some really key features that schema.org doesn't capture, but that is interesting to potential buyers, or for Google to understand that that's a value proposition of your product. So our example here is a really fancy Canon camera, and there's a bunch going on with a Canon camera that isn't ready to go or to explain in the schema.org vocabulary. So how would you do that? There's an additional property, and it's literally called additional property. And what you can do with it is call out the name of the property. The unit code, if you have it, is best because that's a strict reference to a definite unit code. There's also unit text. So if there's no like E38 that you can reference, you could say what it is, or you can simply do name value pairs, which is still powerful as well to explain what's going on. All right. So after you've implemented your markup, I'm sure you want to calculate how much of a difference it's made.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about ROI. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is that, like, the return on investment and how you measure success on your schema markup really depends on the company that you are. Because you can imagine if you're an e-commerce company or you're a B2B company, it's very different, right? So, or if you're a healthcare system, right? Like one might be measuring appointments booked, another might be measuring like hard dollars sold, like units sold, from the e-commerce piece. So when we start our conversation with companies around, like what is the desired outcome that you have from our engagement, we're often asking like, how do they measure success today digitally? And then, what are the things that we can then help affect, right? What are the outcomes that we want to look at? And we don't always just also look at, what the hard numbers are, right? So, we have case studies on our website that talk about, like the % growth that we saw from rich results in our engagement with SAP, or, that we saw like 20% increase in revenue year over year in our engagement with Keen. The other piece that goes with it is a productivity element. And this is like, specific to us at Schema App, but, like one of my favorite stories around someone on a Google Merchant Feed was that we've been working with them, optimizing all their variations across their global sites. Salesforce Demandware is what we were working with them on. And they like set up an urgent call with us to say like, oh my goodness, like I've changed my product page. Like the layout's totally different. Like it's going to be broken. I'm going to have days without, schema markup. And in fact, because the merchant feed was updated, we're like, actually, it's already done. done, like it's already been automated. And so like the time savings around sort of understanding things is part of the ROI that we also offer, with regards to like agility, time to move fast, first to market with adopting some of these new things. But the ROI really is that question of like, what are you going to affect? And that comes, Search Console, we're going to go through a couple examples here, whether it be clicks and impressions. It can also be brand awareness, like where we're really trying to kind of have the brand show up. Or it can be everything as latent as, how do we actually make sure that we're actually getting broader kind of coverage on key features like featured snippets, which we've seen Schema Markup have a positive effect on. So Jeff,
Absolutely.
can you talk about like, at the basics, clicks and impressions are like one of the key ways that we want to measure impact. Can you kind of just guide us a little bit on Search Console, like where you would go to have a look? And then let's talk a little bit about some other ways that we show ROI in Schema App.
Absolutely. So if you're running a campaign for your products, you're in Google Analytics likely. You're also, if you have a website, in Google Search Console. And so I'm here to tell you that Google Search Console is the place you want to look for the impact of your markup specifically. It's really great at reporting in the performance report here on the different search appearances, which will categorize, among a couple of other appearances, all your rich results. And then there's actually these enhancement reports. And what these do is catalogs all of the URLs that has a type that's eligible for a rich result, and it catalogs if there's any errors or warnings which are missing required or recommended properties. So come to Search Console, the enhancement report, to triage and make all your URLs eligible, and then go to the performance report and use the search appearance filter to see how well they're doing. Okay, so after you've marked up all of your products, you can get some additional insight. And what we're looking at here is an anonymized but actual report of the ratings on a product for one of our, across all the products for one of our customers. And what we wanted to do was understand how far you have to go with your reviews and ratings before there's a diminishing returns. And we found out that if you measure, it turns out that you need about like a 4.3 was really the 4.2 was the break point in ratings out of 5. And then in our other one, reports, it showed us that you need at least 10 ratings, like double digits in number of ratings. So
the reason why this is interesting is that, again, like when you're talking about schema markup, people often are like, well, it's just to get rich results. Like that's all we're trying to do. When in fact, like you actually have this data layer of product information now, at your fingertips that you can add into analytics platforms like Google Analytics. So our offering around enhanced analytics, which we've been doing for a long time, we used to call it semantic analytics, is really sort of, how do we use data to answer questions? And, the example we use when we're not on an e-commerce webinar is like around authors of blogs. And so we use our example where, I'm still waiting for Jasmine or Jeff to like their blogs to outperform mine so I don't have to write anymore. But you can actually say like, let's use the data to say like which author is performing on which piece. So, there are categories is also really interesting. And again, if this isn't in your, ERP system or sort of in your revenue system, like it's a great way from the SEO perspective for us to be able to reuse schema for you to add value to the business, to give insights. And so this is, again, sort of part of what we offer at Schema App. It's a really great way of reusing that markup to really sort of show ROI, and frankly also to show ROI of the SEO or digital organization as you're trying to influence across the business. The other piece that we've just brought into beta and we're using, our enterprise customers are getting a chance to look at it and evolve it with us, is something called Schema App, Schema Performance Analytics. Forever we are asked the question of like, what is the impact of my schema markup? And Jeff has really led the charge with our customer success managers, to use those reports in Search Console in order to tell part of the story. But we've actually now built our own reporting and analytics area that will help kind of tell the bigger story. What is the overall impact from all your rich results? What is the diversity of your rich results? How is that changing over time? In fact, like one of the most recent reports were saying like how effective, like on the pages we cover, like how many of those actually get rich results. So we can actually, start measuring on like effectiveness of schema markup across different clients and industries. So if you want to learn more about this, again, it's in beta, and we're happy to kind of share it with you as you're sort of trying to gauge it. And again, if you're already one of our customers in enterprise, like you get sort of early kind of vision into some of these innovations that we're doing in order to really lead the market around schema markup.
Okay, and we have a bunch of resources to help you get started. So if you are a complete newbie, but just know that markup's important, then we have the Schema Markup resources for you in our tutorials, in our newsletter, and in our support channel. And if you're an absolute expert, but you just want to find ways to do it faster or get the most out of it, give us a call. We can have a quick demo and strategize together. Okay, so definitely sign up for our newsletter, get some of that information, book a demo if there's things that you want to achieve. Otherwise, let's answer some of your questions right now.
Oh, there's lots. Jeff, are you ready for this?
I'm so ready. This is my favorite part.
Okay, how about I hit you with a quick one and then you can kind of pull up the next one.
Sure.
We are using a Trustpilot integration to display reviews on our product pages. Does Schema App support pulling Trustpilot content into review schema?
Correct. Yes, we do.
Can you elaborate, Jeff?
I don't know. I mean, it a little bit depends what your website's built with and how you're deploying markup. We have solutions to capture just the text off the page with the highlighter. We have solutions that work with common popular content management systems. So if you're on Shopify, Ecommerce, that will play nicely with your reviews.
Love it. Yeah, if it's there, we can work with it.
Right.
Challenge us. All right, you want to pick one?
So I'm just reading through these.
All right, here's another one.
Yeah.
This one's just like recapping something that we said, but I think it's worth reiterating. So rich reviews require one of these things. So we were talking about product and review snippets on specifically for product, and it requires that you have like a rating or an aggregate rating, at least one review, and a price, and then availability would be ideal too. So those are like I guess we had 4 things. We said 3 things, but those would be sort of the 4 things.
Okay. So I like the question, if there's a lot of pages, is the highlighter necessary?
I don't know, Jeff, how much fun is it to like singly mark up page by page when you're doing like more than 5?
So I've written JSON-LD by hand. I've used a form and copied and pasted, and I've used Schema App's Highlighter, and I would like to use the highlighter every time now because you can spend the amount of time to do 1 page and then do a million. So it's not a necessity, but definitely think about using it if you have more than a few.
What's also great about the highlighter is if there's elements of the page that change, so let's say you're working on your descriptions to make them better, or you're adding new photos, or you're adding new products and variations, it just like dynamically does it. So again, if you have nothing better to do and just do schema markup all day, every day, then, feel free to write it by hand. But I think whether the highlighter or the merchant feed, like those things are automated, and like we built them for us originally, like my co-founder Mark and I, because, like there's so many other things you need to do in order to get things done.
Okay, what level of detail do you recommend? So software category, feature 1, feature 2, feature 3, feature 99. I would say, first of all, like wear your brand manager hat. But if it's important to your product, if it's important to your industry, if you're reading the page and you feel this is valuable to a potential customer, find a way to get it in your markup and let Google have that additional understanding about it. There's a lot of properties available to product that you can use. They're investing in more properties as well, as you saw with the energy consumptions. And then for everything else, you can do even a minimum of a name value pair with additional property. But I think if you feel it's important, it probably is important.
Yeah, I think the stuff we're seeing from the Google Shopping team, the type of properties they're putting in, like their whole context at the beginning of the description is like, in order for us to better understand the products, to be able to match searchers' intent, which then also plays to like all the BERT updates that are coming out and the fact that Google is rolling out BERT to like all different searches in English. This is all like understanding for intent. And so those property value pairs, like those descriptions, they're all going to help understand what the product's about in order to match it. So I would say that's key. Jeff, this is a really great one. And I know you work with SAP. So,
Right.
if you're a B2B company and don't have inventory levels, and I'll say like, and often don't have pricing on there, can you still use schema markup? Can you maybe talk about like product markup for B2B?
Yeah, absolutely. So the answer is yes. We've seen Google, schema.org change the description of product to include service. And I know that in the B2B space, the language isn't the same, it's strictly the same as e-commerce, really. So a lot of like services, a lot of solution talk. Definitely use the product and service multi-type, I think, in that case. If you don't have an inventory level, that's fine. You can still say that it's available in the offer. And the conversation around having pricing may be more difficult. That may mean that getting more customer feedback and ratings becomes more important, or find a way to include a starting from price and just get in at that starting from level.
I think we've also done FAQ in those ones, right? Like
Yeah,
we sort of fall in that category where, it's like perhaps even on that specific product, FAQ makes the most sense to get that rich result and stand out versus, and if you can figure out like what are the early questions people are asking you in their early awareness buying, those are great ones to include in FAQ. Yeah, B2B is a fun one because there's, you have to kind of think about that extensive long buyer journey. And so again, feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to kind of talk through some options there.
absolutely. I see a comment from Stuart Seelip, so good to see you join. Google Merchant Feed, kindly expand on how to mark this up. It's an option in Schema App. So if you look in the integrations within Schema App, a couple of clicks and you're done. So it's high return, low effort.
Oh, John's on here. He's saying highlighter is amazing. I also saw a previous comment where he was saying nice beard, Jeff. So thanks, Jonathan, for joining us. All right, here's another good one. If a Shopify site starts using the highlighter, do they still need to purchase the app? Do you want to take that one?
Uh, do they still need to purchase the app on which platform? Sorry.
So Shopify. Talk about
Okay.
Shopify. Tell me about Shopify, Jeff.
Shopify, I would really recommend linking our Schema app for Shopify app with a Schema app account. And I'll tell you why, because there's more information about your business, even if you are just selling t-shirts and you're just a really straightforward e-commerce solution or service. There's things about your brand, things that you talk about in your blog. There's things that are relevant to your buyers that you can call out by authoring that markup in Schema app. And even if you just want to go with the schema app for Shopify Basic and just get eligible for your product rich results, I would 100% do that, even if it was my own website and I wasn't associated with Schema app, because having the full range of that rich result is just going to drive your click-through rate up.
Yeah, and you can do a lot of like the price, the ratings. We've actually done a lot of integration with different rating platforms and review platforms in Shopify. But again, so if you want to do FAQ, some of these other ones, then the highlighter does work best for that.
When Beverly Mapes, when a local business sells carpet, how can that be marked up? I think with the challenge with selling carpet be that there's just like so many different sizes and variations. In that case, I would probably use the product for the overall, whatever the carpet is, and then the product models for different sizes and variations, and just have an aggregate offer, and then you're in.
I like this question from JC. I feel like we're just getting the pace. We see if we can talk faster. So this is a strategy question. So he's asking, or she's asking, like, would you recommend working down from your homepage or landing page into deeper to content when you apply schema, or sort of the other way around, like start with your money pages and then go up? Jeff, what are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, option one for sure. I would start on the homepage and explain the organization or the business. I would want to get a lot of that detail well defined. I would probably look at an about page and a contact page. a company page with people. Just explain who you are, and then go to your services and your content and your opportunities. With Schema App, you can do it really quick, so that won't take too long. But the reason why I would say to approach it that way is these other things that you do, all of that brand detail can be associated with it because it's already made. And that is also how someone's going to like engage with your website, likely is your homepage and then your top silos. So I would follow that like user customer flow as well.
Yeah. And I'll put in like there's a really great blog and kind of recording webinar on like how to do a schema app strategy that I recommend kind of walking through, and it kind of makes sure that you ask the question of like what's important to the business in addition to what's important to what you can get rich results for, and it's really a combination of those two things that make up your strategy. And the reason I highlight that is because some people are always like they're like, oh well, just go feature hunting. So two things. One, again, with the answer of Bert and the fact that there's a big focus on semantic technology, what Jeff said around like bringing context to those products. So product schema markup island, which often happens, you're not saying who the manufacturer are, you're not saying who the brand is, like you're not actually bringing it back to the company. And so if you're actually trying to bring brand awareness or sort of look at holistically how you raise up the understanding of that business, you really need to do both. So that how to do a schema markup strategy is a really good one. And again, we want to look at this holistically. And the way we engage with people who reach out to us is like we actually through the sales process go through that process with you. So we sort of like with the scoping, we have that question of like, what do we think is going to have an impact? What's going to help you get that ROI? All those things are connected, right? So you want to make sure that you're really connecting those dots as you go through. All right,
Okay.
Jeff, what's next?
Robert Price seems app is really oriented to e-commerce rather than local business.
All right, so Schema App's oriented to whatever you want to do. So we basically have the entire schema.org vocabulary. We have the entire options for e-commerce, options for local business. In fact, we started out doing schema markup for local business, and that's part of like our founder story was that Mark and I kind of found ourselves almost like as an agency working with local businesses here in Guelph, Ontario, Canada. And so our editor solution, which is like part of that pro, which is the $30 a month as a starting point, that's really based on like doing page by page, which was exactly what we needed when we were doing local businesses. They often were on WordPress where we could use the WordPress plugin to automate the blog. And then we could, optimize, I think some of the ones that Jeff mentioned, the homepage, the contact page, the key services or products that we offered. And there weren't often a lot of those. And so the editor really is a solution for that. And then we have like the e-commerce ones that I've shared. So some of those plugins where we try to automate it. And then we really switched, in 2018, we were really leading the industry on how to do things at scale. And so not only do we have things for smaller websites and agencies in order to do that, but we now have a lot of options that allow you to do things at scale. So whether that be, on those platforms like Shopify or BigCommerce, or, on enterprise platforms like Salesforce, Demandware, Drupal, AEM, you name it, we can do both e-commerce, B2B, health, you name it. So, there's really nothing, if you can use the vocabulary to optimize it, we can do it. So that's part of what is kind of, I'll say, brilliant about sort of Schema.
Okay, anonymous attendee, my site is on Shopify and I use Google Merchant Center. How do I choose where to set this up? Shopify or Google Merchant Center? I would say in this case, use the Shopify app because the Shopify app has additional automation past just your product markup. So if you went with the Merchant Center, you would miss out on like it automating your blogs for you, for example.
Yeah, and it's cheaper too, right? Like at some
Right.
point you got to look at the bottom line as well. MJ has one here. Can we curate reviews from another site and place them on our product page?
Yes, yes, you can.
Um, Google's like become, I'll say more stringent, especially around
Yes,
local business on how you do this. They've been less stringent on product.
right.
You can, we always say like, make sure if you can, like to actually say where that review exists. So you can actually use the schema markup to articulate sort of where that reviews come from in order to articulate sort of and connect the dots there.
Yeah, local business, there's a short list of schema types eligible for the review snippet. Local business is one of them. They're on the list, but there's additional requirements
Parameters.
you have to meet.
But
Um,
products, okay, right? Like they
Products
haven't,
is totally okay.
yeah. All right, here's another one. Oh, I like the B2B one. FAQ. Is FAQ schema integration within Schema app to automate the process? This is my favorite new result type.
It's my favorite too.
So can you use Schema app for it?
You can absolutely use Schema App to automate that process.
So we can automate it. One of the things I think you've done is like if there's like a widget that's sort of used for FAQ across the site, can you talk a little bit how you've used the highlighter to do that?
Oh my gosh, yeah, sure. So that's one of the secrets that Schema App has, is that we can create templates that are modular based on what you have on your website. So let's say you have a content module for FAQ. It's an accordion, has questions, hides the answers. The content module probably has a name or an ID. And if that's consistent, then we can deploy a template to fire whenever that content module exists. And then you'll have programmatic coverage of all your FAQs wherever they are.
Very cool. All right, let's do this one here. Oh yeah, how does Google My Business Review and Schema reviews work? Do you want to take that one, Jeff?
Uh, can you say it again, please?
Sure. How does Google My Business Reviews and
Right.
Schema reviews work?
Okay, so I think there's a little bit of a clarification there. So a schema review is telling Google or a Google bot, telling a machine about your reviews. So you could have Google My Business reviews, you could have Yahoo reviews, you can have however you're getting reviews on your website. The schema is just to translate that into a format that a machine can easily consume. So it's not like it's not going to be visible on your page. It's not additional reviews. It's just taking advantage of the reviews that you have.
Awesome. This one's a good one. What happens to your schema markup if and when you cancel schema app? So we're big believers in that you own your output. So you can always download the schema markup and JSON LD. I think what's interesting is that we don't have a lot of people cancel with us because in addition to creating really key markup, they really see the value we add around strategy and service and sort of keeping them apprised of sort of things that are going on in the market, really absolutely key. So I think our service is a key differentiator. But again, we're sort of, we really pride ourselves in being easy to work with. And again, if you invest in building that markup, you can download it. It's not marked up. It won't kind of stay up to date, but you can own that work product.
We have a question from Jonathan Messeroff. I think this product variant schema may be an option for me, a travel site. We have different landing pages that are different package options. So being able to pull that all together. There's added complexity having different pieces on different pages, but we do have a solution for that. So definitely reach out and we can talk through this in more detail.
All right, here's two favorites. I think one is how can we work with Magento? So do you have any recommendations for schema app use with a Magento add-on? So we don't have a native Magento add-on right now, but again, we can integrate with anything that has a tag manager or that we can put JavaScript with. And so again, with Magento, that would be sort of an option there in order to add schema markup. The other one, Beverly, how are you? Great to hear from you. And it says like, how can you turn off schema created by other platforms? And I love this one, Jeff, because like we've been turning off schema markup on WordPress for a long time. So a couple different options. So within our WordPress plugin, we actually, we've been turning off Yoast plugin markup on our own site. So again, we build things that we need to use because we want to do more robust markup, and our free WordPress plugin we think is more semantically correct. And Jono from Yoast and I do a lot of stuff on SEMrush, and so we have this debate often. So within WordPress, there's a way to turn it off. I believe in Shopify, we've also just built one that you can actually like check a box and be able to turn it off. BigCommerce actually doesn't have any native schema markup, and so that's one that we are one of, so like that does deep variations within BigCommerce. There are some other options in there. And then I think, you know, just like part of how we're supportive in the community and engage in the community, we have a JavaScript that's in GitHub, which means it's sort of like open and sort of free for everyone to use, to remove microdata off pretty much anything. And you know, Jeff, go ahead. You use it often.
Yeah, and so it does a little more than just remove microdata. It can remove anything you tell it to. The instructions are in the GitHub. So if you have rogue JSON LD, but it's a consistent schema type, you can eliminate every instance of that schema type. or you could eliminate an entire format as a whole. So you could just get rid of all microdata, just make it disappear. The only caveat with that is you're doing it with JavaScript. So the same consideration for deploying markup with JavaScript is getting it to execute quick enough. Same with the filter, you want it to execute quick enough. So it's the only, it's not a catch, it's just the piece to be aware of.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about services and local business from Jennifer?
Yes, I do. So I know information needs to be on the page when marking it up, but with the local business, you have these local business landing pages. Do we have to repeat the services every time for every local business? And the answer is you don't. Local business has a property that has offer catalog, and you can catalog the offers. And then one piece of the schema.org vocabulary is the @ ID, and that can indicate where content lives for a schema type. So you can mark up all your service pages with that service schema, probably using product as well to get the rich result. And then you can just say, hey, all of these are on these other pages, but nested under the locations where it's relevant.
All right, Jason's asking us a question. So welcome, Jason. Does the highlighter add schema to a specific area or content block, or select page types and templates? And the answer is both. So it's very agile in its ability to call out sort of groups of pages, elements of pages, you name it. Again, we can, if you put in chat with us on our pricing page on Drip, you can book a demo with us, and we're happy to kind of show you all the details of how magic it is. Magic's my word. Must be my my magic ears that I was wearing earlier.
We have a question on implementation. It's similar to what I just talked through, so I'll address that. We're told slower load time of the app schema tag can impact results. Does that impact results? So no, it doesn't impact results. It doesn't change your eligibility for a rich result. We've had this discussion for a long time about injecting JSON-LD with JavaScript, and Google has documentation that supports it now. So there's a final answer. Injecting JavaScript with, or JSON-LD with JavaScript is totally fine. It's just about that execution time. Our JavaScript is really snappy. We implement this every day for tons of customers. It's just about just setting it up and measuring it and being aware.
Yeah, measurement's key, right? Like it's,
Yeah.
you know, we're big believers in, you know, how do we make sure that we're showing value and having that, you know, those hard conversations if we're seeing things not work or if we have suggestions. And again, this is where the schema app experience is so key, because we're working with you with, you know, with the constraints you have within your business and in your platform to find something that works. And the feedback we have is that's why people love working with us.
I got a question for you, Martha.
All right.
All right, back to the Google merchant feed. We're trying
Yes.
to optimize the process around leveraging feeds for paid shopping versus optimizing structured data for organic search. Do you have best practices, thoughts you can share?
Yeah, I read this one a couple times, and I'm not sure I have anything detailed. So it's perhaps one, if you want to reach out to us, I'm happy to sort of look into it. The key thing, you know, again, is, you know, merchant feed can be used in different ways. Usually, sort of if you're optimizing all your products in there so that it can be used in ads, you know, we can reuse that in order to do your schema markup. I think the key thing is, like, what are those fields that you want included? So if you think of some of the things we talked about around price, availability, shipping details, and so forth, you know, what is it that's in the feed that will help drive markup or rich results that, again, if you're working with us, that we can use then to generate really rich offers. And so that could be product variations, you name it. Kind of comes back down to the business question.
I have a guess that, well, first of all, implementing markup is a best practice, and Google's webmaster had it as step number 3 for your product pages. So first best practice is do markup. My guess is that if you optimize your markup and keep in mind the keywords or the rankings you're trying to pay for, that it will help save you money.
Lindsay, welcome. Thanks for joining us. Jeff, I'm going to give this one to you.
Okay.
So how would a broker or agency mark up their product page? For example, you sell insurance with multiple carriers, and you have a page for each carrier you work with and a page for each type of insurance policy you sell. Another example would be a car dealership. You sell all brands of cards and have a page for each one. How would you mark that up? So it sounds like brand pages are sort of like areas, almost like a category or page or grouping page.
Right. Okay. So there's a couple of different ways, depending on how this actually is laid out. You can have your service, and in service, I would multi-type it with product or financial product, which is a schema type that's available for us. Um, and then in the offer, you can indicate who the seller of this is, which would be your organization. And then you can indicate the brand or the organization that's responsible for creating the product. And that's where you can link to your brand pages or your multiple carriers. Um, and so same with a car dealership, if you're selling used cars, but they're all different makes and brands, you can call that out in the product and then in the offer schema indicate that you're the seller. As long as the schema type is product and as long as you have the required properties, you'll get the rich result. And that additional understanding will benefit you in other ways.
All right, I got two. We're almost out of time. So put your questions in. Last ones, we'll try to do a speed round. Jason's asking around the reporting piece is interesting. What KPIs will you track there? Is it page level, domain level, or both? I think this one's interesting because it depends on the business, right? So for
Right.
example, we might look at categories of pages because like we're trying to move the needle for that group of categories. So it could be any grouping within the business or line of business, right? If you're a large organization. And then we also will look at a domain level. So it really depends on that first question of like, what are you trying to do in the business? And then how do we measure it and show evidence that we're making an impact to that outcome you're looking? So we really try to tailor it. Other one we have we ever used, worked with Episerver CMS? I haven't heard of that one
No.
before, but there's not a CMS we haven't found a way to optimize. So give us a shout and we can have a look at that. And then Gustavo asked a question around, is there any benefit of using like the whole vocabulary? Jeff, you mentioned this a little bit about like things that are important to the feature or like about the product or things that you're talking about.
Right.
And in my conversations, or I'll say like undertone of like John Mueller's and Gary Ellis and some of the things they say is like they're using this for understanding. They've just announced an entire big change they're doing around BERT trying to understand, fields and passages. That's working with the schema markup. And so like they're really trying to understand. So if it's relevant to help answer a question of intent and search, use the schema markup property. It's going to help.
I like this question by anonymous attendee. What's the best markup to use for product pages that feature a request for quote versus actual pricing? So number one is if you're not going to have pricing, you need reviews and ratings because you need to have one of those to get a rich result. Number two is there's a property called potential action, and that's where you can use the get quote schema or quote action schema and provide a URL to the page that you actually can type your details into.
Yeah, action schema is like a whole fun area that's like I
There's
think
so many.
underutilized. Let's finish off on this one. JC's asking, there's been
Yes.
lots around FAQ kind of falling off a cliff, and we sort of mentioned this already. So we've been doing a lot of analysis across our group of customers to understand what the impact is, so we can make an informed strategy recommendation. And so, like I said earlier, July through early September, we saw all kinds of variations in the results. We saw sort of, I think, 3 specific ones where we had some decline and kind of stay consistent. We saw some bottom out and kind of stay bottomed out. And then we saw some that were kind of jumping up and down. The good news is that we are seeing some recovery even on those ones that bottom out over the last 4 weeks. So since September. But again, this
Mm-hmm.
comes down to like, is the FAQ relevant? Is it specific that it's answering like an intent question, right? So to me, a lot of this fixing isn't so much like, oh, you can't just splatter FAQ and get a rich result for anything. It's like, is your FAQ meaningful and helpful in that search journey? And if so, then you're going to get that, you'll get that rich result, and it will have an impact on sort of getting answers through. But I think part of it is asking a question of like, are you using it appropriately? Jeff, you talked about a best practice of like not the same FAQ on every page. Not helpful.
Not the same FAQ on every page. You can have the same FAQ on every page, but then only mark it up once is the best practice.
So we're out of time, Jeff. Wrap us up.
Okay, well, we really enjoy these Schema App Lives. We try to answer all of your questions, but we can't because there's so many good questions. Follow up with us. You can sign up for our newsletter so that you don't have to wait for the next webinar to get the news. Martha really pulls together the most relevant schema markup news for you there. Reach out to our success team, our sales team, if you need a demo or have questions. Like, follow, and subscribe.
All right. Thanks, Jeff. Have a great day, everyone. Happy
Take care.
Halloween.